So today on the show, I am joined by Andreas, and such an interesting conversation. I had to keep, even in our short prep session, I had to keep saying, okay, hold on, because I want you to say all of this when we record. So I am just going to get right into this. I actually saw him speaking with Lizz Quain, who I actually had her on my show. She was one of my first shows where she discussed worldschooling. And I wanted to speak with Andreas a little bit more so we could really get into his knowledge and his experiences and just really get into traditional schooling, that mentality versus world schooling. So I'm going to have him speak to that. But before I do that, I want to say welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. And let's, if you don't mind, could you just kind of tell us a little bit about who you are and your background?
My background, it's a door from Indonesia right now behind me. So that's my background, is a door from Bali.
Wow.
Which I had shipped here a long time ago. That's my background. I'm the youngest son of 8 children in my family experience dynamic. And yeah, I was blessed with the freedom to choose more of my own educational options. And I resigned in a very probably early stage when I was 15 from the conventional schooling perspective and did an apprenticeship in Germany, which was more interesting for me because I could actually learn something which I found relevant. And so ever since, I kept learning and really following my excitement for things I'm interested in and found that very conducive. So learning things I love to learn is something which works. And I remember the things I learned because I'm actually excited about it. So that's probably my background in yeah, my own path of education, and which is ongoing.
So at 15, you had that opportunity, which is very interesting. And so that was in Germany. And where were you born?
I was born in Münster. That's close to the Dutch border in Germany.
Okay.
And I had a school director who gave me a grade in Latin, actually. And this grade had me repeat a year. And so I said, no, forget it. I go to the school next door. And I finished the next grade over there, which didn't teach Latin. And that worked. And then afterwards, I was finished at 10th grade. And yeah, then decided to leave the schooling model because I found it utterly boring. And I never really understood why I should get excited at 7:45 in the morning to be at school and be presented often with boring teachers who were not really enthusiastic about their subjects. And I found it more interesting to talk to people. So, and I always was blessed to find people who know more than I do. And I find this by far more interesting.
That's interesting. And your parents, I mean, is this common? I mean,
no, it's not common. I've tons of older siblings, logically, being the youngest of 8, and they all studied and became lawyers and doctors and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't. I started my own businesses and my own projects in my life, and they were all based on stuff which I found stimulating.
So this is kind of just something that you directed on your own. It just didn't feel right. So you're like, I'm going to do what feels right.
Yes. But
that's
you
really
know,
fascinating.
That's we all have that. So if you look at what Ken Robinson, who is probably one of these core people who actually looked into education in the last 30 years, and he has given the #1 speech on TED. So the #1 TED talk is from Ken Robinson, and he is known for things like how schools kill creativity. And in one of his TED Talks, which is the #1, he highlighted that 98% of kindergarten kids are actually tested at genius level when it comes to problem solving and creativity. And that genius level, this is destroyed to a level of 10% of the kids when they finish with their studies. So our conventional schooling system has a track record of destroying humans' creativity and problem solving skills. And so that's scientifically documented. You find it on TED, you find it on YouTube these days. Sadly, Sir Ken Robinson passed away too early, but all this knowledge is very well documented thanks to people like Richard Werman, who is a founder of TED, and people who were passionate about education for the last 50 years.
No, thank you for that, because I'm sure a lot of people will definitely find that interesting to listen to. Now,
it helps because it's scientific documentation, scientific data, and with I still have to find the first person who tells me that his schooling was intellectually stimulating, powerful, and gave him knowledge he loves to remember. The people I find say, yeah, I had a great time with my friends. It was great for socializing and I met good people, but I still have to find the first person to tell me that his curriculum was outstanding. So we all, probably the majority of the people, are not excited about their own schooling experiences, especially since it teaches lots of stuff which is of little relevance for real life. And but we still send our kids into the same machinery.
Yeah, no, I completely agree and understand. And I think it's just like you said, well, we kind of talked about it. It's just ingrained in our heads. And so that's what I want to get into with you. But before, I want people to understand, you do have your own kids, your own young kids that you're world schooling. So just so that people know, how many young kids do you, or how many kids have you had that you world schooled?
My oldest boys went through conventional international schools and schools here, as an example, in Malta. The second of those two, so the second oldest, went into the Florida virtual school. Florida introduced an online schooling model in 1999. So the state of Florida introduced a state-organized online school in 1999, and they created an online virtual school for global students. So Alexander, my second son, was part of that model at age 12. And so that was helpful and was all based on Skype and experiences around it, but on conventional curriculums.
Okay.
And so, but this is already accommodated long time before COVID and Corona experiences of homeschooling through health reasons. And it showed that actually there are other options than sending kids into a concrete box at 7:45.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
But it has been around. Florida has been very ahead of the game in that context, because they wanted to find solutions which avoid traffic jams, which allow kids to pursue tennis or golf or any other options, which I think don't really correspond well with a conventional school timing schedule.
Okay.
So Florida did that, and it just shows if you believe in the conventional curriculum, you can do it in a fraction of the time. Yeah, if you allow kids to do it at their pace, because obviously if you have 20 or 30 kids in the room, you have to adjust your time to the slowest person. That's what life is all about. So if you do it on your own time, you can do it in a fraction of the time, as usual. Yeah, so that's what we all know from public transport, right? So same model.
And I think to kind of relate it to a lot of people, what they know now, a lot of adults have switched to virtual working from home, correct? And so a lot of
adults have worked through something which you can call remote work, and it doesn't matter from where you do it. I can see some people have enough space at home. It's fun. Some people go to a co-working space, which is walking distance. The idea of commuting long distance to an office is totally expired. You saw 10 days ago, the guy called Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's business partner, age 99, and he called an office a luxury. So the conventional, or people who are actually kind of the leading figures, age 99 and 92, Warren Buffett and his business partner, Charlie Munger. So they clearly state that they don't need corporate offices. They do things on the phone. And they have been doing them on the phone for a long time, so telecommunication powered. And if since they are now taking that position and publicly demonstrated it, I'm sure you have a new era kicking in since last week, where people have to explain why they want to spend money on the luxury called a corporate office. It's just a question of time until it filters into the broader structures. But why would you run a corporate office space if it's expensive and if it doesn't serve the people? People love to have something which is people-focused and not work-focused.
Yeah, and I think we've proven, though, kind of going back to your conversation with when kids do remote, they finish at quicker at their own pace. But I think working remote, that's how adults can relate, because I know for myself and a lot of people I speak with, I get so much more work done from home than I ever did in an office. And so I think I'm trying to get people to relate to look at how you do it as an adult with work. Just think of what kids can do with that same. So, okay, so that was still conventional schooling, though. So when did you switch to
conventional? Depends on which culture you come from, because if you come from a German environment, then it's unusual in certain ways how it works in different cultures, different setups, because even the conventional model is structured differently depending on which area you're coming from. But the core, I believe, is to allow kids to learn at their pace. And based on whatever they are interested in. Just look at the playground, look at a normal playground, see what kids love. Somebody comes up with an idea and they say, boring. So, and somebody comes up with, wow, exciting. And then they do whatever it takes to follow the exciting path. So if you allow that for a minute to sit. So if the kids this week want to learn everything about a car, then you can take the topic of a car, allow them to research everything on YouTube, discuss it with them, and they will learn everything which is maths related, which is physics related, what we conventionally, in the way how we conventionally structure education, and make it part of the subject of researching cars. They'll remember everything.
Okay, now tell me, because I want to make sure I'm understanding. Isn't that basically what you're saying, homeschooling though versus world schooling? Like what's kind of the difference? Because I know there is a difference, right?
You know what? Those terminologies are all fluent, and those terminologies we'll all forget in 50 years. You do not call somebody internet company anymore because they have a website. We did this 22, 23 years ago. It was an internet company. Wow, it had a website. Isn't that exciting? And 20 years ago, we called companies an electricity company because they actually had electricity. Isn't that exciting? So these days, you don't call a company internet company or an electricity company anymore because they have one or the other. So schooling and world schooling and homeschooling, forget those terminologies. The core is one was based on a model where we said this is right and this is wrong. And we destroyed what, again, go back to Ken Robinson, 98% tested at genius level when it comes to creativity and problem solving. That's a natural feature. We are all born with that. So if you go through the conventional model, how a predetermined curriculum operated in the last 100 years, that actually reduced that creativity and problem solving skill to 10% when they finish with their studies. Why? Because they don't learn what they're interested in, when they're interested in it, and at a pace which they can determine. So now, go 2 steps back. Pick them up where they are. Today, they're interested in cars. It doesn't matter if they do it from home or from anywhere else. Wherever they have access to telecommunications, they can do the research. Yeah, so they need access to telecommunications, and then it's unstoppable.
Okay, so what do you say to the parents? Yeah, that's great, but they have to learn their math foundation. They have to learn their English. They have to learn those basics.
It's automatic. You will see, speak to people who have world school children who are teenagers now, and you can see they learn all of this, and they learn it even more and better at it. So that's already it was researched by another guy called Professor Sugata Mitra. Sugata Mitra is a UK-based professor with an Indian background, and he experienced self-organized learning environments, or he established those. In the self-organized learning environments, you had 3 kids with an internet access, and you just asked them questions. They had academic results which were comparable to private schools in the UK, and they never saw a teacher. So where I'm coming from, kids love to learn. Children love to learn. Humans love to learn. We just should stop stopping them from that. And what we should do is teach them how to learn. Yeah, nowadays we have these beautiful things like TED Talks, we have YouTube, yeah, we have search engines, and now we have artificial intelligence. Yeah, so artificial intelligence gives you answers so much faster than any teacher. If you want to learn something, ask AI, and you can get a summary of the subject, you know. And now the schools want to ban AI because it's so much faster than any teacher. Please. What a bullshit is that?
Yeah, and I guess I'm just thinking, okay, but how? Like my son, he's in 3rd grade right now, right? Traditional school in the States. We're going through his timetables right now.
Yep.
How do you learn that unless you have that structure? Like how do
you don't have to go see how they play the kindergarten. You don't have to give them a structure. They will tell you what they're interested in.
Okay. Because I know that, like you said, they're testing higher later, because that's the biggest thing, right? World schooling, they'll do what they want, but then they're not going to be able to get into college because some people still want to go to college, right?
And they can do this. You can still do this by getting this necessary paperwork from different institutions, by qualifying for giving them the right answers to any tests, and you can take this and get your papers and go to a college if you want to. What you see as an example, this is all based on trusting you as a human to be human. So who taught you how to breathe?
Yeah, no, you just do it, right?
No, but, okay. How did you learn how to actually use your heart?
You do it. You learn it. Experience as well.
Good. How did you learn how to chew?
Automatic.
Good. How do you learn how to digest?
Automatic. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So if you start, and we all have an intuition. We are taught not to follow it, but we all probably by now have realized it's actually one of the most stupid comments or most stupid teachings. Don't trust your intuition. We all have those skills. How did you win the sperm race?
How did I win the what race?
The sperm race. So when you started, there were a few million sperms and you actually made it. You convinced the egg to open up and say, welcome. So if you look at this, how did you learn that?
It just
Good.
works.
So I'm happy you did, because you followed your intuition and you succeeded. Otherwise you wouldn't be sitting there. So you are by far more capable than you anticipate. And our conventional schooling models actually reducing that, not only to the slowest person in the room or to the least stimulated person in the room, but it creates a huge level of frustration. So my conventional schooling was all characterized of me being frustrated because I was either told that I asked too many questions and I'm disturbing the flow of the class, because I wasn't really interested. Yeah. And so if you ask so many questions, everybody else or many other kids there were kind of half dead. And so that was not popular. Or if I wasn't interested, then it was said, by the way, why aren't you interested? Because I find this boring. And then you're not supposed to say that. It's not very natural. So if we do things in a natural way, actually it works so much better.
And that makes sense. I mean, it does. It's like I look at my son now and it's like he's great at drawing. Great, let's draw. Let's do that. I do it with him and we have a great time and I want to encourage that. And he's like, Mom, I don't really want to go to school. And it's hard. I get it. Right now.
Why should life be hard?
Well, let's speak about that though, because I was telling you how I feel stuck because as a single mom, I don't think I'll ever be able to convince his dad to let me do that, to travel the world and let me world school with him and have him experience it, because I would love for him to be able to do that. But I feel stuck. I do, because I share 50% custody and I really don't believe his father is ever going to let me do that.
Good, but you are now a typical example of the people whose problem-solving skills was killed from a 98% level to a 10% level. You might operate at 15%, but you know what? Speak to any kids who are 4 years old and they might tell you, why don't you have other dads talking to the father of your son? And why don't you look into world schooling hubs and speak to the fathers over there and have them talk to the father of your son? So you are probably right that he will not listen to you. But as I said, I've experienced other hubs where parents come and kids share their time either between the parents. And so they celebrate the fact that their kids start glowing and growing. And that's the most beautiful experience. And if somebody loves to be a parent and actually loves his child, then who as a father or mother would actually turn down the dimmer of their child, and when the child actually starts glowing and say, no, you are too sparkling, or you are too motivated. So I would still have to see the first parent who actually loves to be a parent to do that. Are there ample parents around who shouldn't be parents? Yes. My guesstimate is that we probably have 1/3 conscious parents who love to be parents. There are sadly, yes, there are around 70% of the parents who are parents for many reasons, but has nothing to do with the fact of being a parent. So I don't have high hopes for those, but if you are within the 30% sector or 1/3, then there's a high probability that you actually have a chance, because if somebody sees his child prospering, then I still have to find the first conscious parent who wants to stop that.
Honestly, I think it's more of the American culture. I really do, because I think every single day you can have science and facts and all of that, but we don't want to see that. I feel like there's our culture.
I can see it. This is why the most people in your country don't have a passport. I know, I understand that. And this is why you play the World Series between the East and the West Coast. I can see that. But all of that, on top of that, you have in America amazing things which happen. So the vibe, the entrepreneurial vibe, is second to none. The cross-cultural vibe, if you go to the East or the West Coast, is amazing. And don't underestimate the knowledge-based companies in your country, which are actually dominating the world, are now mostly managed by Indian people. Isn't that fun? So that was not imaginable 30, 40 years ago. I remember when American companies moved their knowledge base to places like Bangalore, India. Yeah, so this was in the 1990s. And so I spoke to some people at that time from companies like Cisco, and they said, you know what, Andreas, we find so many more people, talented people, motivated people in India than we find in the States. Yeah, and so a lot of those people from India then moved to the States later, and now they're running the companies from the States. So you have a lot of people as well who have an unconventional way to operate in America. Look at Google, look at Microsoft. There are tons of them around who are now actually saying, we don't want college degrees. We want people who are actually versed in problem solving. Aha. And then you go back and check, how do I have this problem solving skill set? And you see TED, again, an American setup started by Richard Wurman. And so, and TED clearly documents this in Ken Robinson, Sugata Mitra, and a whole bunch of other people. TED was always organized about education innovators. And you find all of them on TED Talks. So the information is there, America is there. And yes, are you right that a lot of people there live an American perspective, which is like this? Yes. Do some of them exist to have a global perspective? Absolutely. And in that perspective, they are better than most people around the world. So you're right and you're wrong.
No, and I appreciate that. So what would you say, just for parents in my situation, for parents that, you know, are just uncertain, but they'd like the idea, where should we start? Like what resource do you recommend people start with?
Speak to people like Lizz, who lived it. Yeah, so she lived it with being a mom, being an American citizen, now teenagers, but she has lived it for quite a while. And she went through all this Q&A situation of finding answers. And so that's great. And then look into hubs around the world. One is in Bansko, Bulgaria. And so this is just from a geo arbitrage perspective, super powerful. If you go to the local farmers market, everything is kind of organic. Yeah, so you don't have to ask for organic because they only have a kind of organic food.
Yeah, go figure.
And nobody has a lawn because it was considered such a poor country because everybody was growing veggies in the garden, because in the logic of the local people, why would I use my garden for anything else than stuff I can eat, right? So it makes a lot of sense. So they have not moved through the distraction of creating a lawn competition with your neighbors because they always focus on healthy food. And so isn't that beautiful? So
yes, it is.
I've seen American families coming there with their children and realizing how simple and how beautiful it is when you're close to nature in an environment like this, where you have so many remote workers now with their laptops and doing interesting work from there. But the kids have a fantastic time.
Okay, and one other question though on that. Obviously, another concern for a lot of people is this is great, but it's not that easy to find a job online to where I can afford to live. What do you say to those people?
That's bullshit. They haven't looked. So you can find, you can become a virtual assistant and make a few $1,000s per month. So you can do all of that. And so that is not difficult. And you can go to places where a few $1,000s per month lasts 3 times longer. So that is not correct. You can find those, and don't forget, if you have a Charlie Munger, which happened last week, going out and saying corporate offices are a luxury, which are not needed. So that's another way to interpret his statement, because he said, hey, we at Berkshire Hathaway, we didn't use corporate offices. We do everything via telecommunications. So it's just going to run down into the structures. But ultimately, his comment was probably the death sentence to the most corporate offices.
I love that. And I hope we continue to evolve.
We will. Human beings always evolve. You might see certain things going the other way around and this way around, and it takes time. But I'm old enough that I saw fax machines coming out, and people telling me, why do I need a fax machine? I had people, why do I need a mobile phone? And I had people telling me, oh, the internet will never be on mobile phones. I had all of that. And you know what? I always followed my intuition, and that was very different from what the experts told me and what the reports said. And it's unstoppable. It's unstoppable. You have such a different, or let's put it this way, you see right now already in the remote work world that the health situation, so the medical situation, the medical condition of our children is getting so much better. Why? Because they move out of urban centers. They're actually spending more time in nature. So all these issues like ADHD, all this kind of modern diagnosis of children health issues, which I consider as let's say, odd. Yeah, so ADHD is not existing if you send your child into the forest for an hour per day. Gone. So, and the other things like health issues when it comes to fresh air, when it comes to great food. So a lot of health issues for children all disappear. So many of the allergies just disappear. Yeah, so why? Because you have the children who go cycling, spend more time outside, spend time in nature, and they're happy-go-lucky children, and they love to learn what they love to learn. So unstoppable. So any parent who has health issues with children will be highly motivated to look into this, because life will be so much, or the childhoods will be actually very different from what they experience right now, with all these health problems and security issues. And you have this situation that in American schools, security is such a big issue. Yeah, so that luckily doesn't exist in many countries. And so why do you want to create paranoid children? Why should they live there and have a situation to be scared who's coming to run into the school next to? Why would you associate the beautiful thing called education with shootings? So I don't get it. I simply don't get it.
Oh, trust me. I mean, I hate my son just had a drill last week. All the schools out here now have drills. So how to prepare. I hate that. I really hate that. But,
but then pack up his father and go for 2 months into a place where the situation is different. And you might be surprised about his father loving his son, I think, glowing and growing. I've seen it with American families being in Bansko. So, and they keep coming back.
Yeah. And again, I'm still, I mean, he's married, he has stepkids. It's just, I just feel like it's not that easy. It's not just him I had to convince, it's his wife. It's, it's
life is not about being easy, but life is about being beautiful and transformations. And yes, there's a reason when lobsters grow, they go under the rock because they have to remove their shell. And so, yes, and so growth has something to do with being outside of your comfort zone. I'm not saying it's all about comfort at all. But it is about an amazing childhood and about children who are empowered, confident, and who walk their path. And this is, you see this right now. If you go on Facebook and you check Worldschooling or worldschoolers, you see a few 100,000 already members in different groups. So there is already a significant number of a few 100,000 children who are pursuing that path. And so if you grew up in different cultures and with different with exposure to different societies, that is the most powerful thing to address all the issues which we associate with planet Earth, and with actually addressing issues where we are right now running cross-border conflicts, which will totally disappear when children don't even consider borders as an issue.
Yeah. I do want to go back on something else you said earlier, which is an earlier podcast. There was a woman who moved from the States to Zambia. And she was talking about how in the entire school of 300 kids, like not one of them had a peanut allergy. Whereas here, we can no longer, send peanut butter, whatever, because everybody has a peanut allergy. And I was fascinated by that because it didn't even exist. And
I know, but ADHD is the same thing. Asthma is, you know what? We shouldn't have the situation of challenging everything in the current medical world. But let's say this, if you want to have a childhood, which is actually, if you as a parent want to have a child who has a childhood which is focused on glowing and growing, then you might want to consider what is the most fertile environment for that.
No, and it's true. It's true. It definitely and that's why I wanted to bring you on here. It's like, get us to think and get us to question. And it's like, what do we want for our children? So I appreciate it. Now, before we wrap up, I did want to speak about, because you have 4 young children, and you sent me a link for your daughter, and I found that quite fascinating. Do you mind speaking about her, what she did at such a young age and what she's doing?
What specifically?
You sent me the link of the foundation she started, right?
Okay. I know she met a friend of mine who is living in Switzerland, and she met her in Zagreb. And Maya was talking about that she doesn't like the beautiful park where she just walked by and where she spends time, that people threw all their cigarette butts under a bench. So to make a long story short, that dialogue continued, and they set up a project, and this project has gone kind of positively viral, or a positive pandemic of young kids who realize that they can make a difference by, first of all, cleaning things up, which is simple. But the more important thing is standing up and speaking to adults. So the power of a 7-year-old girl or a 7-year-old boy talking to adults in various languages and asking them, why are they doing this? And aren't you aware that cigarette butts do not deteriorate in nature? And so it's so much more powerful when a 7-year-old does that. So people do not want to hear this from a 2-meter tall German guy. Trust me, they don't. But if you are 7 years old and a boy or a girl, they can move and they can change the world. And this has worked really well. It was started in 2020. Then the first initiative was in spring 2020. It became something which has now happened with many schools who picked it up. So they make it a subject during their curriculum, and then they take the kids out. So they take ownership of a certain area, which they keep in that condition and where they talk to the adults. And if the kids bring it up, confronting the adults, plus discussing it during the Sunday lunch with their grandma, that creates a movement. And so, yes, it's called the MaNaBu Movement. So MaNaBu is Japanese for education. So the MaNaBu Movement has now established the foundation officially in America, because it's probably the most credible jurisdiction for things like that. And it got support from America as well. And yeah, it's happening in different countries. And she has talked about that, I think, recently when she was put on stage as a surprise. I think it was in Tirana, Albania, during an event. And she loves talking about it, and she triggers new initiatives around it, which is fun. And so, but this is exactly, if you allow them to learn what they want to learn, and you support them and back them up, unstoppable. Her brother was 1 year old when it started. The first initiative, I took him for a walk today. He's now 4 years old, and he cannot stop himself from picking things up and talking to people if they throw stuff around. And yes, we have a 4-year-old boy. Yes, and he comes with the physiques and the cuteness factor and the intensity that he believes that he knows what he's talking about.
No, but and that's why I wanted you to speak about it, though, because for anyone who thinks that this lifestyle, this way of educating kids is going to result in their kids not being educated, your daughter, your what she's done, I mean, how could you possibly say that? I don't think I think that's more possible because of how she's been raised versus.
She has not been destroyed. Again, go back to Ken Robinson, Sir Ken Robinson, hashtag Sir Ken Robinson, check the #1 TED Talk, look at the numbers, 98% tested at genius level when it comes to problem solving and creativity. That's kindergarten age. And yes, this 98% probably is still very much alive with my children. Yes. And are they backed up on top of that? Yes. Is that a skill set which is unstoppable? High probability for that. And people can say they're not formally educated. Correct. One way to look at it, I'm not formally educated, if you want to look at it that way. So, but I have made a few things happen in my life, and I will continue to do so. And you see that people who believe and see and follow their intuition and keep their senses awake often are the ones who actually make the change happen.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing all of your insight, because I really hope, and that's the reason why I wanted you on, and I know why you joined me, is to really start to get people to think and question and just hopefully start making a change and seeing things in a different way. At least start thinking about it and see what they can.
It's I think my last comment on this might be to really, you will only have a hit rate with people who are conscious parents and who love to see their children glow and grow. So if you have that feature, you're on the right path. There, as I said, there are sadly people who have children because somebody told them to have children, but they're not really excited about it. And they are probably much better off to put them into play groups, into kindergarten, into after curriculums and all the stuff, which is very popular with some people. So they put them into tennis class and horse riding and this and this and this and this and this. And because the parents want to create a child which is in line with they are excited about. And so this happens in many cases. The entire industry is focused on that. So the whole consumption models are all based on this. And if you tell them you go into nature and play with a stick, yeah, it's not the thing which doesn't come intuitively to them. So, but I believe that children are super powerful. They come up with solutions which we haven't even thought about. And we should stop trying to get them stuck in concrete boxes, and we should allow them to unfold, because they're not ours, they come through us, but we are not there to tell them what to do, because they are the people of the future and we are the people of the past.
I love that. It's very powerful. And thank you. I'm going to make sure when I post this on YouTube as well, that I'll put the Sir Ken Robbins, because I think that'd be really.
I'll send you the link
helpful.
again, so Ken Robinson,
Okay.
and I can send you a link as well to the TED Talk. Yeah, it's all obviously it's easy to find, like Sugata Mitra as well, with self-organized learning environments, all out there. The information is there, but we have to take a conscious choice to see what we want, how we want our children to prosper.
No, thank you very much. Very, very helpful. And as you mentioned, Lizz Quain, I'll make sure to put her information in there as well, because I know she offers a lot of information about world schooling. So I'll make sure to include that as well.
I discussed it with her last year. I said, listen, forget about everything else. Focus only on the hand-holding of parents who want to do it. And this is what she is brilliant at. And so that's powerful. And you will see there will be the first 100 lists, and they will actually move it forward. This is simple, this is scalable, this is sustainable.
I love this. Thank you so much. Such a great way to start my morning, that's for sure. So thank you so much for joining me and for joining us, for sharing your insights. I can't wait to look more into this. So thank you very much.
Reach out anytime. You know how to find me.
I will definitely do that. Take care.
Thank you. Ciao.